So if you're listening to the show, you might know that I have been going through shit lately. And this really made me think that I would love to offer my group program, the Urban Cleanse group program. But this time I am part of the group. I would like to go back to losing the weight that I gained these past couple of years. And I would like to feel better in my own skin. And I know a lot of you do too. And I do know that my program does work if I only did it myself. So if you'd like to join, please go on www.Organilicious.ch, click on the Urban Cleanse button and join us. It'll be loads of fun. We'll do it together. I will be your support, your knowledge, as well as your team member. I'm looking forward to see you there. Thanks a lot.
Hi, I'm Gina, the founder of the Swiss Kombucha Company, and a guest on today's episode of So Freaking Healthy. We're going to talk about what kombucha is, what to look for when you're buying kombucha, and our other thoughts on a lot of different random things. I hope you enjoy it.
Hi, Donna. How are you today?
Hey, Megan. I'm good.
I cannot lift my arms today. I can lift them to about here.
What'd you do?
I feel like a T-Rex with my arms. I've been doing some weightlifting, not like on the machines, but I use Apple Fitness Plus. And my goodness, it doesn't look like you're doing a whole lot, but when you don't use your arms in those ways on a normal basis, have you ever done like a whole bunch of squats and not be able to go to the toilet the next day because you're like, oh my God.
But I gotta say, it is my favorite part of working out. I'm weird like
is
that.
The soreness?
Yeah, but like the good soreness, right? Like right now I haven't moved enough lately, and I have a soreness from like a muscle that's just, it's so terrible. My hand is falling asleep. I'm like, I hate it. That pain, no go. But when I'm feeling like I did something and I moved and I'm like, oh my God, this is great. And I'm one of those like psychopaths who will like, I'll make extra movements to actually feel that pain.
Yeah, it's kind of like a loose tooth or like a popcorn kernel stuck in your teeth. You just can't stop. You have to keep touching it.
Exactly. Yeah. I love it. It's so much fun. It makes me feel like I did something. I'm like, I'm proud of myself. I feel my body like in a good way. So I love that stuff. And I don't move as much. Like I didn't sign up. I want to sign up for the gym, but we have a little mini home gym at home and my kid is like a workout freak. So I have no excuse to sign up for the gym.
Hey, Gina, welcome to So Frickin' Healthy. How's it going?
Thank you so much for having me. I am feeling great. It's going to be a good one.
It definitely will be. We're super excited to have you on board. I know that Megan wrote a bunch of questions for you. She's just giddy. She's back there going like, I have so many questions. And I'm just happy to have you and see you because we've been talking for years now and we haven't actually seen each other.
Yeah, but the Corona years,
awesome,
so it doesn't even count, right? It's like we've practically known each other about 3 months because they're Corona years.
That's a fair calculation, I would say.
Yeah.
100%.
We also didn't age, so that's good too.
It's all the kombucha.
Yeah, well, I think the best place to start is the obvious of what is kombucha because like it's everywhere. People have heard about it, but and I know because I brewed at home. But maybe just to start us off, what is kombucha? Why should we care about kombucha and how it like kind of ties into health? Maybe I know that's a big ask.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic to hear that you've actually brewed it yourself. I think that people who've actually gone through that process of brewing it themselves and understanding what's on the shelves in the store versus what you're making at home have a very different way of looking at kombucha. So I'm excited to hear that. So kombucha is fermented tea. And sometimes when I say that, people think that it's the leaves themselves are being fermented and then you steep a tea with it. But what actually happens is you steep a tea, you add sugar or some sort of a carbohydrate to feed a culture. Then you add the culture to it and you let it brew from anywhere to 2 to 4, even some people do 6 weeks. till you get this super funky tasting brew that doesn't really taste anything like tea anymore. It's just kombucha. And then you go about flavoring it. There are lots of different methods for flavoring it. Bottle it, make it carbonated, and get it out to people, and have it be this wonderful product that has a lot of natural benefits if you're making it in the way that I just said with those steps involved. Unfortunately, it's also a product that a lot of people don't understand, and there's not a lot of clarity on it, and it's not a protected word anyway. So what people have come to find on grocery store shelves that's labeled as kombucha isn't always what I've just told you kombucha is.
And that leads me into it because I see it creeping on. Well, it's been on the U.S. stores for a long time now. Every time I go home, I just see a whole section on kombucha, and it's nice. I drink it, but even now in Switzerland, which is usually like 5 years later with all of the new foods that the U.S. have.
You mean 20?
I even see now.
Yeah, I was going to say
Coke has kombucha.
You're very kind to Switzerland, Megan.
Yeah. So maybe what is the difference? Like what the stuff on the stores, is it really still as good for my gut health as the stuff that you make in small batches or that I would make from home?
There's such a huge variety that's actually out there. And it's a really interesting question to dig into. From, the raw ingredients that some producers are using to the processes they put into place, to what the nutrition labels say versus what's actually in the bottle is actually something that's heavily in dispute, and a lot of lawsuits have come out over that particular topic. So there's good and bad. And unfortunately right now, there isn't much of a way for consumers to know what they're consuming other than just, going by their taste buds and listening to their gut and understanding, is this having a positive effect on me? Does this taste very sweet versus what I'm being told is inside? So there are certain things that you can definitely look for. And maybe I should back up a little bit. So in my experience with kombucha, I had a lot of food allergies, which is how I first became introduced to kombucha and also the entire world of fermented foods. I had, when I was in college, I had this hippie girl who was living in the dorm room next to me, and she had all these weird things growing, and she would eat things like nutritional yeast. And I was just like, this is just weird. Just like be normal. Like, and had zero experience with it. And then, was drinking Diet Coke all the time and just generally having that kind of a lifestyle. And then, once you get in your 20s, your body stops being able to deal with stress in the same way that it was before, especially if you have a stressful career or, do high intensity sports. It's a lot of stress on your body, and these things kind of tend to accumulate. And these problems that I was having before that I would just kind of ignore started getting worse. So I actually realized, hey, this is a food allergy. And I had to start testing it for myself, and started reading up more and more about like how people were dealing with the same issues that I had. And that's where fermented foods came into play. And I started realizing, oh, wait a second, I had this exposure before. I just wasn't willing to listen then. Maybe that girl wasn't so weird, and I should have paid a little bit more attention. So I bought a set. I didn't really know what kombucha was meant to taste like at that time, but I bought a set and I started brewing it, and I smelled it and I was like, does this need to smell like hot garbage? This can't be right. So I tentatively took a little sip and I was like, oh, that's not actually what it tastes like. This is really interesting. So I started brewing it more and more. People started hearing that I was making kombucha, and I was making at one point in time about 200 liters a month at home. And everyone was buying it off of me. I didn't have any myself. Meanwhile, the entire kitchen is sticky from the production process, and I'm not getting any of the benefits myself, which was about the time that I just, came really disenchanted with my job. And I started to talk to my boss about potentially, if there was going to be an exit package around or any sort of a list that I might be willing to just raise my hand and be on said list. And I got my wish a little bit sooner than I had originally anticipated it. But that's how I was kind of, when you manifest these things, sometimes you don't get to pick the timeline, and I was thrust into it. And it was just a really interesting process. I needed to figure out first, is there really a market for this? How do I scale up from doing 200 liters at home to making a high quality product that I can get onto store shelves. And so I started doing a tour. I went to about 30 different breweries in North America and across Europe. And I had calls with people in other countries that I couldn't get to, just to understand how they were actually doing it. And I pretended like I was writing a blog about all these places that never materialized. I guess I could have done it if I didn't want to do my own brewery, but that takes a lot of time. So I learned in that process a lot of the things that kombucha brewers are doing. And so one of the things we have in Switzerland is shelf-stable kombucha. So kombucha is meant to be a product that has live, active cultures, naturally existing cultures. And if that's the case, it's not shelf-stable. Those the two things that just don't fit. You cannot make it happen. So those producers, they're doing one of many different things. You can use a kombucha concentrate that doesn't actually have any active cultures in it. You can filter it. So using a filter that takes out all of those active cultures. Sometimes they pretend that it only takes out the yeasts because the yeasts are larger than the healthy probiotics that are in it. But it doesn't. It's we've had it tested. If you're filtering it, it's taking out both. And the third thing is to pasteurize. So even like Reform, who does it, and like there are organic shops carry brands of fully pasteurized kombucha that openly say that it's pasteurized on the front. It's just in very small font, and no one actually bothers to look at it. So yeah, those are the three main things. What's really a bit disastrous, though, is that some companies are then actually introducing active cultures that are actually lab grown and sometimes even GMO cultures into that product. So that's a lot of what you're seeing in the US. So, you've got really big brands like GT's Kombucha. It's a great product. I thought it was really wonderful. Whenever I would go to the US, I'm like, yeah, I'm getting a really good, consistent taste. I'm tasting something that tastes like kombucha. But in fact, I found out recently that the cultures that they put into GTs are lab grown cultures. So it's not something that is, normally something that your digestive system really wants to be in contact with. It's the same, for lots of different products that we think are natural. So you think like citric acid, for instance, is something that's, this probably just comes from lemons, when in fact it's often derived from mold. So it's, these little things about food that, technically a label can look like you're drinking something that's good for you, but what the origin is of that supposed good for you thing can very much vary. So, for consumers, it's really important to reach out to, if you're consuming a lot of a particular brand, reaching out to them and saying, hey, how is this actually produced? What's really in this product that I am consuming? If they don't get back to you, that's your answer, right? If they do get back to you and they have an answer that you don't like, this is probably something that you should either have less of or, cut out of your diet entirely, or they might get back to you and tell you, hey, no, we work really hard in order to make sure that you have a product that's the best possible thing for you. Does that make sense?
100%. And something, a couple of things that you mentioned here really resonated with me. I have these conversations with my clients all the time about kombucha and about sauerkraut and about yogurt, even just the simplest thing that in Switzerland, 99% of the fridge, the dairy fridge, is yogurt. They're obsessed with their yogurt. And when I tell people that literally 99% of it is just garbage, it's not actually cultured, it's not a living organism that you're actually eating and can benefit from, let alone the fact that I'm not a big supporter of dairy. But if you're having it, have it fermented, have proper fermented stuff. But a lot of people are walking around thinking, I'm so freaking healthy. I eat, I have yogurt first thing in the morning and da da da. And I'm like, well, can you show me what yogurt you're having? And it's not anything. It's just not.
Oh
And
my,
so,
Dana, you're preaching to the choir here. My favorite is the people who think they're doing the extra good and they're getting the sugar-free, fat-free, cultured, probiotic added yogurt, right? Like you look at the back of that label and you're like, how is this something that you should actually be consuming?
how is that even being sold? But that's beside the point. We can probably talk about this for hours. But it's one thing to not eat healthy and be aware of it. I eat McDonald's 3 times a week and I'm proud of it, is one thing, right? It's another thing to say, I eat pretty healthy, but not actually understand that most of the things that they're eating that are that they consider to be healthy are actually not, right? So all of the kombucha, if you find kombucha in the shop and it's not in a refrigerator, it's not kombucha. It cannot be kombucha, right? I mean, those little steps forward just to kind of see there is a reason why there are yogurts and then there are yogurts that say bifidus. you know those are the cultured ones. There's literally one brand in Migros that does that. everything else is just not going to be cultured. And so, and also, what's it called?
Kefir?
Kefir. Yeah, exactly. So you have all of the kefir ones and stuff, and there's one brand in Migros, and there's a little hole on the top of the cover, and I'm like, that's a live culture.
Yeah.
There's a reason why they put a little prick in there. That sounded dirty. I'm sorry. So, so, and then there's also the pasteurization part where if you grew up in the 80s, you know that pasteurizing back then meant like it's going to be clean. It's going to be like, it's the best. It's pasteurized. It's the best for you.
Mm.
But we now know especially with fermented and cultured and kind of like, aged and everything like that things, the pasteurization just kills all of those good bacteria. So it's not actually good for you to have of course not kombucha and all the good things that are actually fermented, to have them pasteurized. Apple cider vinegar,
Yeah.
all of those little things that you think you're having good quality of and healthy source of, please read the label, please check everything, because you might not. You might just be having some garbage that someone stuck a sticker on and decided that they're going to call it kombucha or yogurt or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
And it's
And
actually not.
you know what?
Which
If
is a
it's
shame.
something that you like, that makes you feel good, then fine, whatever. I mean, even drinking one of those kombuchas that's not really kombucha is probably better for you than having a Diet Coke, right? But if it's not making you feel good, or if you drink a lot of it, just dig a little bit deeper into it. I know everyone has really busy lives and you don't really have time to look at every single thing that you're consuming all the time, but just, the things that you're exposing yourself to regularly, at least check in on those.
I grew up in a household where we did a lot of canning. I grew up on a farm. We had a huge garden. My mom canned like
In
mad.
Minnesota, right?
Yeah, Indiana, not Minnesota. and we and what I find now is like that a lot of people who are interested in this kind of growing cultures, right? First of all, it's a little scary because we think growing something that's like a bacteria or yeast, we always just think kind of like moldy food, right? Like, how is this good for us? We're eating moldy food, right? But I also feel like a lot of people are a bit scared to experiment at home because of botulism in case of canned foods and things like that. And I just feel like now with the internet, there's just so much more information out there for people to actually do it at home and to do it safely. But I mean, sourdough bread, sauerkraut, all these kind of different fermented foods, I just find them super fascinating that we can grow these things at home. You see it living, it's breathing, you can feed it. I have my SCOBY in the refrigerator right now, just kind of waiting for the next time that I'm going to brew a batch. Can you talk a little bit about the SCOBY and kind of like what's really happening at a microbial level, that conversion into a fermented beverage?
Yeah. You know what? I'm not the person to ask about like the highly scientific stuff. And actually, I mean, I understand it, obviously. I'm in this field. But as far as like actually remembering all the big scientific names, not your girl. So don't expect to be bored by that now. So what happens is you've got this culture. And actually, putting it into the fridge in between, not usually the best thing. Just as an FYI, just be careful for mold.
My kombucha is never tasting very good, so we'll touch that later.
I'll give you some pro tips here. So you put the culture in with the tea, and I said before that you have to put some sort of a carbohydrate in with it, and lots of people experiment with different things. Kefir is interesting because kefir likes to have a little bit of variety in its source of food, but kombucha, it wants its one thing, it wants sugar. So if you want to experiment with different types of carbohydrates, make sure that you're keeping some on the side so you have something to go back to in case you kill off your SCOBY, or a good friend who can give you a SCOBY on the side, or you can buy them from me too. Just a little plug there. So what you want to be doing is you add the culture to your tea that has the carbohydrate, sugar preferably, and you let it sit. And what happens during that sitting process is that you have yeast that are in the culture. And there's actually a lot of different types of yeast. And depending on the balance of the different types of yeast, you will get a different tasting kombucha. So they start eating all the sugars, and then they produce all sorts of things like acetic acid, which is called Essigsäure in Swiss German, which is to say it actually does taste like essig, which is vinegar. As well as healthy enzymes, and they also produce some alcohol. Then there are bacteria that go after what's produced by the yeast, and those bacteria multiply, they become probiotics, and those are the gut healthy things, as well as the enzymes and acids that those yeasts produce. So I did mention that the yeasts produce alcohol, so the bacteria are eating all of that alcohol as long as they have enough surface area and air to do that. Once they're cut off from air, so the SCOBY that forms at the top each time, that's cutting it off from air. So once it does that, then it's not eating the alcohol anymore. And at that point in time, if you continued allowing it to ferment, you're going to get an alcoholic product. So this takes me back to what I was saying before, that I did a tour of all these different breweries and what they were doing. And if you have a typical vat, it's kind of like this shape, right, that you're doing about 4,000 liters of kombucha in, you don't have very much surface area. And so it gets sealed off at the top quite quickly because they're putting a large SCOBY inside to begin with, and then it seals off its edges, and you're having the yeast produce all sorts of things, including that alcohol. Now, we have a tolerance range of 0.5%, and over that, we have to pay a different tax amount, and the consumers, it will only be available for adults and not kids. And, having too much alcohol, also not that great for your gut. So we need to keep it below that 0.5%. So what those producers who are producing in these really big 4,000 liter vats do is they actually add tea, they add water, they add juice to the kombucha to bring down the alcohol percent. We do ours a little bit differently. So you probably have like an 8 or 5 liter brew vessel at home that has like a spigot in the front. Is that what you use? Okay. So that's kind of like the same thing of those 4,000 liter vats, but made smaller. So what we actually do is we've designed a vat that's actually vat turned on its side. So instead of having just a very small top area that has air exposure, we have a very long air exposure area, and we make sure that the SCOBY is not getting to the edge, so it's getting a lot more airflow. So we don't actually need to add a whole bunch of other things to bring the alcohol percentage down. That's how we've made a workaround for that. So you can do the same thing at home by finding.
That's really awesome.
Yeah, so you can do the same thing at home by finding a different vessel shape. I haven't found anything on the market that's good at a reasonable price point for a home brewer. You can go the route of just saying, hey, I don't care if it's at 1% alcohol, which, that's not really that high, or yeah, I'll just mix in some water if it's a little bit boozy. Sometimes it's fun to have your own home brew that gets a little boozy sometimes. You feel it in your knees first, and then you have a few more glasses. It's a fun evening. But if you also want to keep that alcohol percentage down, a lot of the recipes that you find online for brewing your kombucha actually call for way too much sugar. You don't have to start off with that much sugar in it. So you can really bring that down and experiment with what still works for your culture. You'll get a lot less of the acetic acid, which is probably the funky taste that you don't like that much. And you can have a better home brew that way that still has all the probiotics in it, but just less of the acids.
So for your products, are you using black tea, green tea, white tea, which, because it has to be like real tea leaves. You can't do it with an herbal tea. It has to have, as far as I understand, the tea, and the tea leaves, obviously the difference between white, green, and black is just the amount of time the actual leaf has been fermented. So what kind of leaves do you use for your
and the growing time for the leaf?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
This I did not know.
Yeah. So I'm sure you guys hear a lot about heavy metals, right? And it's probably an area of interest as well for you. So tea leaves oftentimes have a lot of heavy metals in them. So we found that in all the studies we looked at, that black tea had considerably more heavy metals than green tea and white tea. So green tea has more than white tea. So we actually do a blend of green and white tea. It's also the particular percentage of each that we use works very well with our water type at our brewery. We actually have access to well water at our brewery. It's one of the reasons we picked that location, because we wanted to make sure that we have very high quality water. I mean, obviously the water is good regardless of where you are in Switzerland, but the source of it can vary in what amounts of things like antibiotics or leftover pharmaceuticals that you're finding inside of that water. And it's just with well water you're getting a slightly more filtered product than you would be out of just normal municipal water. So yeah,
naturally filtered, which is The best part.
Exactly. Yeah.
Let nature do its part.
Yeah. So if anyone's brewing kombucha at home, they're not really getting the taste out of it they want. Just like experiment with the different tea types. You can actually use herbal teas as well. We actually even brewed a few batches of kombucha with rose. So we just steeped rose and used that instead of tea. It was a slower brewing process, but it gave a really fantastic taste. Unfortunately, we didn't find enough buyers who were willing to buy rose kombucha. We had like 5 people obsessed with it, but
I didn't know about it. I would have bought the whole batch. I'm obsessed with rose water. I'd like it. I have an issue with rose. Sorry.
yeah,
Go
it's
on.
not very. I find that in Swiss culture, you don't have a lot of floral tastes. I mean, you have elderflower, and that's just like kind of it. They don't really explore much into lavender and rose as a food. If we were in England, we'd probably be selling a ton of rose kombucha, but we're not. So, yeah.
That's really awesome. I think there's a couple of things that I want to touch from what you said, Gina, which are really, really important. The first thing that I want to touch is something that we promised our listeners from the get-go, which is basically that we will let them know when there's something that they need to know within this whole beauty of this topic of fermented foods and fermented goods and healthy bacteria and everything like that, that it does not necessarily fit everyone, right? So we know why things that have beautiful bacteria and it's beautifully fermented with just top of the line products and ingredients like yours is potentially amazing for our gut. But listener, if you have a histamine intolerance, if you are suffering from frequent migraines, for example, if you're suffering from certain skin issues and you don't necessarily feel much better, but rather maybe even vice versa, when you're having fermented foods, real fermented foods, as we said before, then it might be because you're histamine intolerant. And that's something that you want to test with your doctor. I think even conventional doctors test this nowadays. And if you are histamine intolerant, you want to avoid aged and fermented food and drinks. Okay, so that's just the one thing that I wanted to kind of clear out of the way. Continue listening to us because there is a way that you can kind of deal with it, and we're not going to touch that necessarily today. But you might want to listen again to this conversation when you've had that kind of dealt with. um, Another thing that you said, two more things, two words that you kind of said in there and I wanted to touch was bacteria and probiotics, right? So bacteria, again, talking about the 80s, bacteria was like, oh my god, bacteria, like, let's run away and not, like it was the worst thing ever. Bleach came into play. My mom is like, like those what do you call it, like those cowboys in the western movies with like the gun in both ends. She has like bleach, and if anything is going on, she's like, like pulls out the bleach. And so that's kind of the time that we grew up in. I know in Switzerland, Gina is Swiss, so knowing that in Switzerland it's not, Javel is not like a sold out product like in America, but it is something to understand is that as humans, we're more bacteria than we are human cells, right? So bacteria can't be bad. We are bacteria. Like literally, we're made of bacteria inside and out. And so bacteria is not a bad thing. Yes, there are bad bacteria and good bacteria. And when we're talking about our gut, you cannot consider kombucha or any fermented food as your probiotics. Okay, it is gut friendly, it is full of good bacteria, but don't take it as a supplement. Drink it, enjoy it, have it because it's amazing and it's really good for you, but don't consider it as a supplement because these are two different things and they will, you'll react in different ways to both of them. So that was my little chime in.
But yes, probiotics have a whole bunch of different variety there. It's the best thing you can possibly do for yourself. So the good bacteria that are in your body are the aerobic ones, and the bad ones are called the anaerobic ones. So the ones that are bad for you die with exposure to air, and the ones that are good for you actually thrive in that kind of environment. Probiotic is and kombucha and all those fermented things are one of the things that you can support the really good bacteria that's in your gut and help that flourish. But there are so many ways to do that without taking a supplement, without drinking kombucha, just including laughing more, smiling more, surrounding yourself with people you really like, which is completely free. And I encourage everyone to do more of that. Your insides and your outsides will benefit greatly from just spending time around people you like. But just also taking a yoga class, dealing with your stress in better ways. It's really good for your gut microbiome, and it's lots of things you can do in there that are totally free, very good for you, that support having a good lifestyle.
Yeah, no, I was curious because your notes before the call, you mentioned something about some wheat issues, and you alluded to conventional medicine, and in a way that made me feel like there was probably more of a story there that would be interesting for us to hear about. So what happened with your wheat issues, conventional doctors, and kind of like your own health journey?
Yeah, I think maybe you guys can also resonate with the fact that we women aren't often taken, or not always taken, perhaps as seriously as we should be, and that has happened to me on several occasions when I've gone to doctors to say, "Hey, I've got a problem. Can we look into it?" And one of them was I had just started dating my now partner, and all of a sudden, I just got into Bikram yoga at the time. I had a really stressful job and a new boyfriend. So my body was just like, yeah, this stress thing, we're not doing this anymore. We're going to start giving you some symptoms so you can deal with it. And I didn't know then about the wheat allergy and my egg allergy. So yeah, my stomach started like just ballooning out and making me look like I was pregnant. So I've got this boyfriend who's just like, what's going on over there? Just, I like you, but maybe is there something we need to be talking about? So at the same time, I met someone who's now become one of my closest friends a decade later. And she went to the Meyer Clinic. Do you guys know the Meyer Clinic? Yeah. It's really amazing clinic that I've always wanted to go to, but it's a little bit on the expensive side. Rihanna goes there to deal with all of her health issues. It's all the famous people plus my friend. Anyway, she went and they tested her for a few different food allergies, and it turned out that she had a gluten issue. And she came back and she told me about all the treatments, and oh yeah, I've got an issue with wheat/gluten. And I was like, what is that? Like, certainly human beings, like we all eat this all the time. How can I possibly, or you, be allergic to this thing that historically your whole family has been eating for, decades? How would that actually come into play? So I started doing a little bit more research, and I realized I've got all those same symptoms. So I went to the doctor and told her, hey, I think I've got this issue. Can we do a test for it? And she got onto her computer and she pulled up the Wikipedia page for celiac disease, turned the screen around to me and said, see, this symptom, everyone who has celiac disease is actually very thin, so you don't have it. And I was like, ouch, on a lot of levels.
I would have punched
Won't
her.
be coming back. But then I actually just started cutting it out of my diet in the ways that I knew that I was cutting gluten out. Like I stopped eating bread or pizza or pasta. But then I started noticing that, hey, it's in so many other things, and just doing more research on food allergies. Clearly, I knew that I needed to find a new doctor. It's kind of an uphill battle if you're in Switzerland. Everyone's like, no, I'm not going to take new patients. I found a new one like 5 years later. But yeah, then I just started testing everything on myself and saying, hey, if I cut out this food, what happens? And then it turned out that it was eggs as well. But yeah, that's just a one incident that was just like a huge alarm bell of like, hey, maybe Western medicine doesn't always work for me. And since then, I've found a lot more holistic alternatives that I think are fantastic. From everything of just, I think we use too many soaps on ourselves. You can reduce that and start using natural products for all sorts of different things, and watch your skin get better and your hair get better and your teeth get better. So yeah, it's just something that I've done a lot of reading on, and that works for me. I don't think it works for everyone. Obviously, that if you want to keep up with traditional, or not really traditional, I guess you should call them more chemical and new things, rather than traditional is actually an older way that we were doing things before all these soaps and chemicals got introduced. But yeah, works for me.
I mean, exactly. That's the funny thing, is that before medicine got introduced to the picture, which was not that long ago, the doctor was the guy giving you herbs and essential oils and spices and all the good stuff. So that's really, it's something that I also, I could very much resonate with. I used to go to doctors and they would tell me it's all in my head. And I was like, listen, guys, it can't be that the list of 25 things that I'm coming to you with, including like, look, 7,000 pieces of hair just came out of my head by just stroking it, like this is not all in my head. And they, because they didn't have an answer, they would just tell me that it's all in my head, and they put me on antidepressants, and that just didn't go the right way. But there's a lot to say about allergies versus sensitivities, and unfortunately conventional medicine is more aware of the allergies, which is something that your body will react to within 20 minutes of you having something that you're allergic to. And it could be as simple as I don't know, whatever, right? A skin rash or something like that, and it could be as bad as an anaphylactic shock. So it's like you don't want to really mess around with allergies, but a sensitivity could actually get triggered up to 3 days later. And so that's something that is very, very hard as a person doing this alone to actually find out and figure out. Because do you remember what you ate 3 days ago? Because I don't remember what I ate 3 days ago, right? So it's something that is so much harder to do and so much harder to kind of figure out. And if it's a couple of things, it's easy. A lot of people have a lot of gut issues nowadays, and we're stuck in this situation where, again, I'm going to blame the 80s because it was really just the 80s that it all came in. But the amounts of antibiotics that we were given and are still being given, the like you said, the chemicals that we're putting on our body. Our skin is our biggest organ. We can't expect to use chemicals on our body but eat organic food and be healthy, like, and not have the eczema or not have like issues, because it is being absorbed in our body. So it is so important for people to understand that there are ways about it, but sometimes, unfortunately, and especially when we're talking about chronic issues, conventional medicine is not necessarily the way to go. um, because of just a lack of education on their end. They're getting 1 month of nutrition class in the 8 years that they go to school. And so you can't expect them to actually know enough about it and to connect the dots there.
Yeah. I met a woman recently who was a psychiatrist, and she actually left, became a nutritionist, and started working really on gut health. And the reason that she did so was because she realized, I have so many patients that are coming in for depression, and I'm giving them pills. But if she looked back and thought, actually, so much of this is related to what they're eating and their gut health. And she found so many studies that supported the fact that you can treat depression far more effectively with so much of a higher efficacy rate with the foods that you're eating and supplements supporting your microbiome than you ever can by prescribing pills.
Yeah, there's some recent studies. I think it was somewhere in one of the Scandinavian countries, maybe Norway, it could be Sweden, I'm not sure, but they did a study where they tested treating depression with traditional pharmaceutical methods and treating depression with a change of diet. So it's what I love now, and we're in this really beautiful time right now where medicine is changing. Like conventional doctors, Western medicine is waking up to the fact that these connections exist between the mind and the body, and they're not two separate things that should be treated separately. If you're depressed, you can have gut issues. And if you have gut issues, you can be depressed or whatever, or hyperactive, or, there's all kinds of connection between the gut and the brain. That's Google gut brain connection. You'll get like, I don't know, 35,000 books right now about the gut brain connection. But I think the reason why it is getting so popular is because people are going, shit, that's it. That's why, like, they're like, the connection is real. Like, people are going, yes, I get it. Like, that kind of stuff, when you read something, you're thinking that's kind of hokey, because you're like, I don't really think that works. But I feel like I don't think people have more or less gut issues now than they did maybe 30 years ago. I think people are just putting the dots together, and the information available now for people to kind of self-diagnose, like what you were doing, Gina. Like, I'll just Google it. I'll figure it out myself, and then I'll go to a doctor and tell them what I need.
Yeah.
Which should not be the way to do it, right?
Yeah. It's interesting in the information age that we're in right now. We're inundated all the time with messaging from large corporations, pharmaceutical companies, and a lot of them are doing good too. I don't want to say that all pills are bad. It's not. They're doing some really great stuff too, but they have the power to release a lot of information on the market, make it look like it's not actually from them, to put your attention into a particular direction and saying, oh, this is the solution, when actually, if you peel the onion a bit. So for me, I was actually working in a pharmaceutical company before I started this company, and during my orientation, I found out that I actually had access to all these really fantastic medical journals, and I thought, oh, this is cool. So the company that I was working for makes products for patients with MS primarily. And so I thought, oh, I'll look something up about MS. So I typed it in. The first article that I came up with was about a Danish island that experienced a huge jump in MS cases after they had to change the way that they were curing meat because of the changing winds. And that was for about a decade. And the cases of MS went up just by an exponential rate. Then afterwards, the winds changed again and they went back to the traditional way of curing meat. And the rates of new MS cases went down. And I thought to myself, that's weird, right? Like, why are we not actually looking into why the way that you're curing meat can have an effect? And so I started digging a little bit more into the similarities between different types of patients. So who was actually having, which groups of people were having higher rates of MS. And I also found some interesting stuff there that I won't get into details. But there's actually a very interesting study that came out recently that showed that MS is actually caused by a virus. And it only came out like 2 or 3 months ago. It's probably didn't make it onto your radar because I don't know if you have a background with MS. But for people who are probably researching this particular area, that's interesting because viral load is actually something that you can control through food by eating a lot of really green food. And there's a particular doctor whose name is unfortunately slipping my mind right now. She's incredibly well known. She's published a lot of books on this that essentially said, here are the foods that you need to control MS. And she has had so much success with her treating herself because she has MS herself, and with patients who are treating it that way. So you don't need all these strong pharmaceuticals. But the truth is also that a lot of human beings aren't willing to spend as much effort on affecting their health and affecting their lifestyle in a way that they see as hard, or maybe they don't like greens, right? And adapting to what can really make them feel better. My brother and my sister-in-law and one of my cousins are all doctors, and they're very good at what they do. And what I noticed in them was a shift from when they started medical school until now they're all practicing doctors. And they had this, very ideological perspective about how they were going to be treating patients, time that they would spend with patients, the way they would be treating things, maybe like giving them holistic options as well. And that has changed so much since they've actually had to treat patients and realize that not everyone has the same mindset around health and the importance of their health. My brother is actually a doctor in Texas. And he treats a lot of patients who have diabetes. And some of them are like, hey, while you're amputating that toe, just go ahead and take the rest of them off because I have diabetes and they're going to fall off anyway. You're going to have to do the surgery later. Rather than thinking, I can keep my toes if I make some really big lifestyle changes, So I don't want to vilify that way of being. Like, everyone has their life. They get to make a choice on how they actually spend that life. But, there are reasons that we're getting inundated with particular kinds of information. And you just have to make a choice for yourself about what kind of a lifestyle you want to have and sort the information accordingly.
Yeah, definitely. And we have to think about the fact, I always tell people, we can't blame ourselves because, again, growing up at a time when everything all of a sudden became quick fix, medication, you have a headache, take Tylenol. Your headache will go away. It doesn't matter what type of headache, your headache will go away. Need food? There's a microwave for you. And here's some frozen food that you can pop in the microwave for 2 minutes. So we got into this rhythm of life that is like, give me a quick fix, give it to me quick, fast. Like, I need something yesterday and I don't have time for anything else. And now we're spending more time like flickering through Facebook, but we keep saying we don't have time, right? So that whole kind of like way that we were being groomed into looking for that quick fix and that quick medicine doesn't allow people to understand why McDonald's is cheaper than buying whole foods, right? And instead of thinking like, why is this so expensive at the Whole Foods, at the good quality, free range eggs, whatever meat, whatever veggies, they're saying like, that's expensive, but why is that garbage so cheap where you can leave it for years and years and years and nothing will happen to it? Not even bacteria wants to touch it, right? That's just alarming. That's kind of scary. And I think that for some people, yes, they do need that wake up call. And for some people, it's just a lost cause. It really is, because we're so used to that way of life. And we're so used to saying, okay, I'll finally go to the doctor. They'll give me something. And even if it doesn't work and it doesn't help, we're going to continue taking that pill because the doctor told me to take it. And again, I'm not downgrading doctors at all. I think there's a space, a place, and a space for everything. And yes, if you need a freaking operation, you broke your arm or God knows what, if there's a proper illness, yeah, you need the doctor. Like, don't come to me. But if there's something chronic and if there's something like, that you need to treat from the gut, then I don't know how much a doctor is going to be able to help you, because that's not their expertise, is all it is. There's no background. They're going to try and find the pill that works for you, and there aren't any. So it's an issue, but hopefully we'll see some change in the near future. I think we're on our way there.
So Gina, when we asked you kind of like, besides kombucha, what's your thing right now? Like, what's your passion? You just like wrote food, which I absolutely loved when I read it, because
Relatable.
I also love food a lot.
That's good stuff, huh?
So I wanted something completely different. Like, what is like the meal that you're like you're making like all the time, or is there a particular ingredient or like theme or genre of food? Like, what's going on? Like, what's like sparking you right now?
So I'm doing a lot with buckwheat right now.
Buckwheat. Okay.
So
tell us all about, what are you doing with buckwheat?
So my favorite standard go-to pretty fast meal that includes a lot of fiber, good for you protein in it is, so I make lunch at the brewery every day for me and whoever is working that day. It's to, so I also don't eat garlic. Also not great for my digestion. I know, right? So you can add garlic to this if you like garlic and it's okay for you. Not the case for me. So I start off with some shallots and some onions, a little bit of ginger, and you can change any of this recipe that you like, right? In some coconut oil. Get that nice and sizzling, soften up the onions, and then I'll add some greens to it, whatever is on hand, usually some celery and some carrots that are finely chopped. And, maybe there's some bok choy around or some, broccoli I would add in later, but if it needs more cooking time, you add it in the beginning. And at the same time, I'll have some buckwheat noodles going. So Alnatura has a really nice one that's actually buckwheat and sweet potato mixed. Really like that one.
Soba noodles, King
Yes.
Soba.
Yeah. If that's the brand, sure. I haven't actually looked at the brand. Good plug. The straight buckwheat ones are good too. I'm not a huge fan of the one that Cope has, because I find that they fall apart very easily and they're a little bit more gloopy than just the noodles, the straight noodles, but whatever is on hand for you. So those go into some water while I'm cooking some sort of a light protein. It could be tofu if I'm cooking for someone who doesn't eat meat, or shrimp or fish. Usually we don't do actual meat during the day. If we're going to do that, it's probably out at a restaurant. And yeah, that all combined together at the end. It's very good. Lots and lots of flavors.
Oh.
Usually I'll season whatever protein with some coconut aminos. And it's quick. It's really healthy for you. It keeps you full for a very long time if you eat enough of it. And I love food, so I do. And yeah, it's all around a good time.
Just for our listener who doesn't maybe know what coconut aminos are, they are basically a gluten-free, soy-free version to soy sauce. And it's delicious and it's sweet. It's not as salty as soy sauce, but it's actually sweeter. And it's delicious. And we use that as well because of the soy intolerance at home. So that sounds really amazing. I love that. And it sounds like something my kids would just go crazy about. We love buckwheat and we love soba noodles and we love practically everything that you said. But we
Oh,
are okay with garlic and we're not okay with onion.
okay, so switch it out. Hey, I
Funny
wanted to
enough.
tell you that I have told so many
Yeah.
people about what you do with your two boys, about teaching them how to make food, and that, I don't know, I think it's a weekly basis. That's what I've been telling people anyway, that they're actually in charge of making you and your husband dinner. And everyone's just jaw drops to the floor that like kids would be able to pull this off, that they actually have fun doing it. I just think you've done a really wonderful job with that. So well done. Way to raise two well-rounded
Thank
young
you.
boys.
Thank you. I mean, we'll see, but for now we're okay with them. We're keeping them for now.
At least until they're 18, then you'll see after that.
I mean, look, they're hitting like 13 and 14 at the moment, and it's starting to get iffy already. And and then like the body odor is going to kick in soon, so I'm not promising anything. I'm just saying for now they're here. The more they cook for us, the longer they'll stay. But that's all I'm promising.
If there are any boarding
That's all I'm gonna
schools
say.
listening to this, you can send some brochures your way.
Please do, listener. Please do.
So Gina, I'm assuming we're going to have some listeners that are not based in Switzerland. And number one is like, how far do you ship? Like how far can people get your product? Because it is, it needs to be refrigerated and whatnot. And if they can't get your product, what would you tell a person looking for someone who's doing like what you're doing local? Like how can they suss out a good local kombucha provider?
Yeah. So first question, we are actually international because we ship to Liechtenstein. So, we've hit the big time now.
Woo!
And I do actually have an order going out to Turkey next week of someone who's ordered a culture off of me. So, but we're not actually shipping our kombucha that far because it does need to stay chilled. If you are not in Switzerland, or hey, even if you're in Switzerland and you want to know if the kombucha that you are drinking is any good, we do have some tips. First of all, we said it beforehand, if it is shelf stable, which means it is not needing to always be chilled. So if, the bottle says it has to be chilled after it's opened, that counts as shelf stable. If you like the taste of it, go ahead and drink it. But I don't personally think that you're drinking what I define to be as kombucha. The second thing that you can do is you can write the producer and ask, hey, do you filter or pasteurize or use a concentrate? Now, there's a lot of different thoughts on using a concentrate. So concentrate is essentially just a really concentrated kombucha. They send it around in, you can get it in 25 liters, you can get it in 400-liter batches that they send to you. And then you add tea to it, you can add water to it, juice, whatever, to make your particular concoction, and you get it into bottles. I don't think that that's real kombucha because I just don't. I think that's something that you're actually brewing for a long time. That's what kombucha is. So you can ask them, do they meet those standards? If they don't respond, you have your answer that they don't meet those standards. If they do respond and say that, that it is one of those things that they do, then you can make a decision for yourself if you want to consume that. Something that we haven't touched on yet is actually the sugar content in kombucha. What I've really been shocked by recently is, whenever I discover a new kombucha, I always try it. And I've been really shocked at how much higher the amount of sugar is than what's on the nutrition label. In some instances, it's actually been twice that of what's on the nutrition label. And there's something super easy that you can buy. I think the one I bought was 25 francs, so it's not that expensive. So if sugar is something that you're looking to control, a lot of producers of other beverages as well don't give you an accurate picture of how much sugar is in your drink. It's called a Brix meter. It's spelled Brix. It's super easy to use. You just put a droplet on the front of it and look through it, and it gives you an indication of how many grams of sugar is in your beverage per 100 milliliters. And you'll see if it's wildly off, then you don't know what else they're lying about with that particular product, which I personally find alarming. Recently, I bought a few things from Migros just to see if those are accurate, because I thought, hey, maybe big companies are actually a little bit more concerned about getting sued. And I found so many really large producers that were exporting their product into Switzerland did not have a sugar content that was anywhere close to what it said on the label. So definitely something to look out for.
Wow.
So we've got looking for non-shelf stable, asking the producer what's actually in it, and then looking for the sugar contents are the three main things that I would look into for, finding yourself a kombucha that you like to drink, that you can drink often and use as a replacement for perhaps some of your other bad habits.
And honestly, as a huge fan of Gina's products, the Swiss Kombucha Company, I can tell you that I have tried different companies, and I really am. I'm a huge fan. Like, it's so delicious. And you can just feel, like, with every sip, you can feel the love that has been put into every single bottle, and the quality and everything. It blew my mind the first time I drank it. That blows my mind every single time. So it's not like a drug that you're looking for that high again. It's literally every single time it will blow your mind, and just give it a try. It's just going to be great.
Thank you.
So that was, for those of us in Switzerland, I was on your webpage and I saw that something about some kind of system that you have. And I know that you talk a lot about sustainability. And what's your tagline again?
Feel good, do good.
Do good?
Yeah.
Feel good, do good, yeah. Which I think is a great tagline. So for those of us who are living in Switzerland, I know you have a little map on your website that says this is where you can find your products. But could you explain to me again, like what does this look like when I want to go and kind of get my own kombucha?
That's what you meant by system. I was just like, shoot, what have I written on there that I don't know? Right. So yes, one of the things that we really wanted to try hard to do was to make our kombucha in the most sustainable way possible. And we, with any product that we're sourcing, any ingredient, we're trying to get that in as plastic free as possible. Certain things it's just not. But as locally sourced as possible, as plastic free as possible, or if it is plastic, that we're getting plastic that we can reuse. So one of our teas has to be delivered to us in a plastic bag. We reuse those plastic bags for other things. So for instance. But then we thought, a lot of the waste that's created with kombucha is actually the bottle itself. And we don't really have that many different options. If we're selling it in a store, then it kind of needs to be in a pre-filled bottle. But there are different environments where we could do that differently. So we came up with this system of a tap machine where you can actually select the kind of kombucha that you want. So you have like a little screen and you tap what flavor and the amount of kombucha you want. You trap your credit card on the side of it, and the machine is quite clever. It has some flow meters inside that measure off exactly what you've paid for and release that into your glass or your bottle. And then you have just your bottle that you're reusing each time, and it's much better for the world.
Love that so much.
Smart technology.
Yeah, so we've got one in Zug. We launched the first one right before COVID hit, and then got to pay for the rental space without actually getting to sell any kombucha. That was fun. So we've got one, the first one in Freirum in Zug. Then we have another one in Markthalle in Basel. And then in Baden, we have a store that we partner with called Ohne. It's kind of the same concept, except for you tell them what the quantity in your bottle is, and you just pay for that amount rather than having the flow meters inside.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So I can also order a new SCOBY, because it sounds like you told me earlier that leaving the SCOBY in my fridge is probably not the best thing. So I can also order a SCOBY from you?
Yeah. So it's 2 points. If you said your kombucha never turns out very good, you might have a culture that is just has the kind of yeasts in it that don't taste really great. Sometimes it can taste like vomit or hot garbage, and it's just not really very good. Or you can, we have some of our tanks. We have lots of different tanks because we do 25 liters at a time. Some of them give this like really nice apple taste to it, even though there's no apple in it whatsoever. So you want to get yourself either a SCOBY from a friend who makes really good kombucha. You can order them on our website as well. Yes, you don't want to refrigerate your SCOBY because it does reduce the ability for the SCOBY to take care of itself and make sure that no pathogens are entering into the culture. You just want to keep your eye out for mold that might be forming on the top. So if you feel like perhaps reducing the amount of sugar you're using could also result in a better taste, and just keep an eye out for mold on the top of the SCOBY, then you're probably good.
Yeah, I prefer to do my brew with green tea. I like the flavor a little bit better with green tea. And actually, the flavor's not bad. I, for the longest time, had a problem with the carbonation, with the second ferment. And maybe I was just not patient, because I'm not patient. But it was only after some time where I'm just like, okay, I'll just put it in there and forget about it. And then eventually it was carbonated, but it was like, I think I have to have like 2 or 3 vats going so I can, have a constant supply. But now that I know that I can just get yours in Marktala, then that'll be like my in between.
Yeah,
it'll like hold me off for a little while while I wait for mine to ferment. Actually,
yeah, that is another option to just go get it from us. The carbonation can be tricky sometimes. Like you want to keep it as a low sugar product, but the sugar that's being eaten by the residual yeast that are in the kombucha that you've taken out of your first ferment, those are the ones that are eating sugar. Those yeasts eat sugar, and they produce the carbonation. And that gets trapped inside. So a lot of people say, oh, you should be burping the bottle every single day to make sure that it doesn't get overcarbonated. But if it gets overcarbonated, you can just put it into the fridge and the carbonation stays in the kombucha better. So much better to just leave it alone than before you open it, refrigerate it so that you're making the carbonation more stable, and then pour yourself a glass. So you can do that too. Also, have you tried in the second ferment doing anything with berries or with ginger?
So I actually used a ginger simple syrup. I think it was a store brand ginger syrup that I grabbed. I think we grabbed it for some other reason. I'm like, oh, maybe I can do this, and I'm a chemical engineer by schooling. So, I had all of my bottles, 5 bottles. Okay, I put 1 tablespoon, 15 mils in here, 20 mils in here, 30 mils in here. And, I'm really doing the scientific process on this stuff because I'm like, I will make this carbonated and it will work. and it does. And then actually the amount of sugar I added really didn't change so much with that small quantity that I was doing. But, I've never really done it with like fruits. I know the person who actually got the SCOBY from, he was telling me about how, add some fruits at the end and add some other things. And I haven't experimented too much with all of that. But to tell you the truth, I just have my IKEA vessel next to my coffee machine. My husband brews beer, but he brews in a whole nother room because we know we can't cross-contaminate this stuff. So his brewing, and he's got like the beautiful stainless steel, huge vats of, he's really into the beer brewing thing, which I could confiscate for kombucha brewing, I'm pretty sure. But mine's small scale. And so literally I'm like going in and making the coffee in the morning. And while the coffee's brewing, I have a shot glass and I'm just like, I'm just like drinking a little shot glass every morning of kombucha while I'm waiting. And that's pretty much how I do it because if I don't see something, I don't use it. So if I bottle this stuff and I put it in the closet and wait for it, I'll forget it's there. And then what happens when you forget carbonated shit at room temperature. Yeah. Stuff explodes.
Yeah. I had one customer who always came every Saturday to pick up a 6-pack. She was like, yeah, I just needed to let you know, I'm going to have to repaint my kitchen from the 6-pack that you gave me last week. So I won't be getting any of the red ones anymore. So when we started off, we wanted to be really pure to the kombucha. We still want to, but if you do a second carbonation in the bottle, you risk having high alcohol levels. So we couldn't do that anymore, and we had to force carbonate. It's the one thing that we do differently from a home brewer other than our brew tank shape. So yeah, we reduced that risk. But before I got to that point, I had a new client that I was, really desperate to get the kombucha into his restaurant, and he was really nice, made some time for me. And we sat down at this table, this beautiful velvet chairs. And I started talking to him about how special our kombucha is. And I opened up the flip top bottle, set it down on the table because he asked me a question, so it didn't feel appropriate to put it into the glass. And while I looked away for just a moment, it proceeded to spray absolutely everywhere. So then I grabbed the bottle in order to put the cap back on it, and that projectile that was just, going up and out then started going straight at the customer, right? So then I cap it. I'm like, I'm so sorry. This has never happened before. And I started cleaning up, and he, got me some towels so I could clean up all the mess. Some customers came in, he went and helped those people, and we sat down again, and he was like, okay, yeah, so I'm going to reopen this bottle. And it happened a second time.
No.
Yeah. All over the velvet chairs, like everything was covered in kombucha. Needless to say, they do not carry our kombucha. I haven't been back.
Oh,
Yeah, we've changed things.
Very
since then.
funny and
Yeah.
such a sad situation.
Hey, but something you said about the using the beer containers for the kombucha, your husband is very right to keep that in a different place. So this is actually all the historic brands of kombucha in Switzerland. They had to use beer producers in order to manufacture their kombucha for them, unless they invested in their own brewery. Which there's one other company who's done that, but they've still pasteurized theirs. But that's a story for another day. But if you do outsource production with a beer producer, you have to either filter it or pasteurize the kombucha in order to put it through the same lines, because it's incredibly sensitive and will ruin the beer. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
You don't want to ruin his beer, Megan.
You might not make a friend that way. Might be straight to divorce court that way.
Yeah, no. I don't typically drink his beer other than just to taste it, you know, because you always taste it. But he also doesn't typically drink my kombucha. So we have very, very separate fermentation desires in our beverages.
I love that you guys are both doing that. It's very cool.
Well, thank you so much. I think we've talked your ear off, and I am just fantastic. I'm just so happy with all the amount of conversation that we had. I mean, we went to like all four corners of the earth, I felt like today, starting from kombucha. And I think that is the special talent of most women, to be able to go from one topic to another very quickly, and men find it very hard to keep up. So if we do have any men listeners, you can go back and rewind and try to figure out how we got from kombucha to all the different places that we went to today. But Gina, this was absolutely fabulous. Is there anything else you want to like leave our listeners with before we end our talk today?
Yeah, I think we've covered so many different areas. I think everyone's got a lot to think about now. So
we're leaving you with your thoughts.
Yeah, excellent. Thanks again, Gina. It's lovely having you here. We'll see you.
Thanks for
see you
having
again
me.
soon.
Hey, you're still listening. Great. Okay, now I can tell you about my 12-week goal setting session. So in this 1-hour session, I'm going to help guide you through a powerful process inspired by the best-selling book, The 12-Week Year. I know. Everybody at this time of the year starts to think about year-long goals. And I would argue that year-long goals are really hard to contextualize. What is going to be happening in a year from now? You have no idea. But 12 weeks gives you a little bit better understanding, because you kind of already have your calendar booked out for the next 12 weeks, kind of know what's going to be going on. So if you can focus your goals on the next 12 weeks, you can make some really big actionable steps towards your long-term vision. So in this 1-hour session, we do talk about long-term vision. We talk about where you want to be. We talk about what your 5-year, 10-year, 3-year, all those goals are. But that's only a brief part. We know, we see the long distance view, but let's break that down. And then we get into the 1 to 3 strategic 12-week goals that are going to get you to those long-term vision. Then we're going to put that into a really cool action plan with like checklists and timing and all that jazz to make sure that you are clear and that you have accountability to get those goals done. And then that's not it. Then we are going to tackle your roadblocks, because you know you have roadblocks. So we're going to tackle those roadblocks. We're going to create a plan to overcome them. So you know when you start to self-sabotage, you know what you can do to get around those roadblocks. Okay, so if this is interesting for you, it is only 1 hour of your time and it's only 45 Swiss francs. I host this gig over on Fiverr, but I'm also going to put a link down in the show notes. So if you're interested, hit me up.